This episode is brought to you by DistroKid. Hey, have you heard? I'm going back to Las Vegas and the Punk Rock Museum to give guided tours. This happens to coincide with the When We Were Young Festival. I'll be there over the course of 4 days, October 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th. 2 tours a day, one at 1:30 p.m. and one at 4:30 p.m. These tours will sell out. Space is limited, so grab your tickets now at thepunkrockmuseum.com. I got stories for days, and I can't wait to share them with you. So don't miss your chance to walk the halls of the museum and share punk rock memories with me. Head over to thepunkrockmuseum.com and get your tickets now. See you soon.
Hey everybody, Chris DeMakes, a podcast producer, Chris Fafalius here with another Throwback Thursday episode. This week, we're throwing it back to October of 2022 when Stephen Egerton sat in to discuss the classic, fan-favorite Descendents song, Everything Sucks. Now, the Descendents album of the same name was released on September 24th of 1996, so if you're listening to this throwback episode when it comes out, we're approaching the 29-year anniversary of the record. To get you in the right mindset for this episode, here are some things that were going on in the world around the time of its release. On September 4th of 1996, the 13th annual MTV VMAs were held, where Smashing Pumpkins won Video of the Year for Tonight Tonight, Beck won Best Male Video for Where It's At, and Alanis Morissette won both Best Female Video and Best New Artist in a Video for Ironic. Gangsta's Paradise, a song which we did a whole episode about here on the show, took home the Moon Man for Best Video from a Film. These awards also marked the last public appearance of Tupac before he was shot in Las Vegas a few days later on September 7th, and then passed away at the age of 25 on September 13th of 1996. I forget sometimes that he was only 25. I feel like he did so much and made so much music by the time he was 25 years old. On September 16th of 1996, Judge Judy premiered in the U.S., and on September 20th, the First Wives Club starring Bette Midler, Goldie Hawn, and Diane Keaton was released, which, funny enough, I just recently watched for the first time. I watched it in like the past month, and I liked it. I recommend it. Watch First Wives Club tonight. You won't regret it. On September 23rd, Jim Carrey married his second wife, Lauren Hawley, who was in Dumb and Dumber with him. Unfortunately, they got divorced the next year. And on September 29th of 1996, the Nintendo 64 was released in the USA. I remember my friends really liked the game Wave Race for the N64. I was still a Sega Genesis guy at that time because I loved the NHL games, and they were so much better on Genesis than on the Nintendo systems, obviously. Okay, now try to keep all this stuff, playing Wave Race and the VMAs and Judge Judy and Tupac, in mind as you go back to September of 96 with Stefan and Chris in this episode. From October 17th of 2022, this is episode 125 of Chris DeMakes a Podcast. Stefan Egerton discusses the Descendents' Everything Sucks. Enjoy.
Hey everyone, today's guest is Stephen Egerton, guitarist for the Fort Collins, Colorado punk rock band, The Descendents. Together we break down the writing, recording, mixing, and inspiration behind Everything Sucks, taken from their 1996 comeback album of the same name. Unbeknownst to me, Everything Sucks was Stephen's first full musical composition, written solely by himself, that he brought to the band. At 1 minute and 26 seconds long, Stephen kind of figured it was just another album track, or that the song may not even make the album. Not only did it make it onto the record, the album was called Everything Sucks, and it was chosen as the first song on the record. We talked about the events that led up to singer Milo Aukerman rejoining the group just prior to writing the album, the demo version of the song, how Brett Gurewitz and Epitaph Records came on board, as well as Andy Wallace, who mixed the album. As a fan, I was instantly hooked by the song and the album. And still, as a fan, I was stoked to talk to Stephen about the song and this whole time period. So sit back, relax, and let's go for all. This is a good one.
Hey, have you heard? Chris
podcast. Well, hey, Stefan, how's it going?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Chris?
I'm doing great. This is awesome for me. This podcast is probably the greatest thing ever because, I've known you for about 25 years now. And how many times have I seen you at festivals and I know your family, and I'm not going to sit down with my friend and ask them the questions I want to ask you here, but I'm still a fan. And I have a lot here that I want to talk about. So I'm super excited that you joined us today.
I'm glad to be here, and it's this should prove to be kind of at least a funny podcast for those who are interested in this kind of a thing. This particular song we're discussing has it has at least some points of interest. Let's put it that way.
Well, that's awesome. You're the fourth person from the all Descendents family here with us. We had Bill, Milo, I had Chad on the show, so I'm super excited that you're here. And I want to give the listeners a little bit of a backstory here with you guys. You're the fourth album by Descendents, All, in 1987 is when you joined, you and Carl, and then that was followed by a couple of live albums after you guys, I guess, had taken a hiatus, broke up, whatever you want to say. 1987's Liveage and 1989's Hallraker, and then the three of you, Bill, yourself, and Carl, splintered off into the band All for 1988's All Roy Says. You guys released 5 more records after that, with 1995's Pummel being your first and only major label album for Interscope. And I wanted to ask, from what I remember, you guys took your advance money from that, and that's when you built the Blasting Room. Is that correct?
That was a thing that, I think a lot of bands had sort of done that, but that was becoming kind of, labels were beginning to frown upon that. But Bill and I had enough history with, recording records that I think they felt like, okay, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense with these guys because they self-produce anyway. And so yeah, that's exactly what we did. We got our advance and we built a studio so we could record records for us and others. In fact, we even mixed your record there. And we mixed Borders and Boundaries there. So yeah, that's exactly what happened. That's right.
Well, no, it's so cool because I can't state it enough what my band learned from you guys. We would just watch you and just soak it all in, and you were just kind of doing everything right. Here you took that advance money, you sunk it into your own studio, because by that point, you and Bill had done a lot of records, not just with Descendents and All, but you had produced for Big Drill Car, Doughboys, and it's funny, going back to Around Percolator and then breaking things with All, and then getting into the Interscope record Pummel, I just saw this progression. The sonics were just getting better every album you guys were making, and by the time you did Everything Sucks, you guys were dialed.
Well, and with that one, we definitely had help because Andy Wallace mixed that one, which is,
Yes.
That guy is, I think the old adage is he's forgotten more than I'll ever know about recording. I'd say that's totally true. He was absolutely brilliant to work with. And that was a huge part of how it was not only, school time for Bill and I. We learned just an immense amount from him during that, but just fun for us because we were huge fans of work he'd done. And so that was a big deal for us.
Oh, yeah. Andy Wallace, it's just think of the stuff that he's done. He mixed Nevermind. He's done Slayer. He's done
Slayer, Madonna, he can mix anything because he's an inherently musical person. He's just kind of got that. He's just amazing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought him up. I have him here in my notes, and I want to get to a little bit more with him in a bit. But you guys, punk bands, I don't know, were the Ramones making money in the 80s? Maybe they were, but there weren't many punk bands making money back then, and here you guys were. That's the other thing my band learned is the perseverance, the slogan of going for all. You guys were just out there living out of a van and doing it, and you guys were the blueprint for the later acts like my band that came along.
Like Carl and I sort of, we had done little bits of small, kind of van touring with our band Massacre guys from Salt Lake, where we grew up.
Yeah.
And, we had done some of that, but everything that we knew about that world came from watching Black Flag, TSOL, bands, Husker Du, bands like that would come through, and we would sometimes even promote the shows ourselves in Salt Lake. So we had a little bit of insight into how that thing worked. Now, getting to do it full time in Descendents, obviously that was massive for Carl and I, but we lived in a very meager way, but we were very practical with what little money we could come by. So in the beginning, it was just like, okay, we just tour around and do shows and keep the tank full. And that's about all we do. Get home, pay the rent. We're broke again. We go back out. Well, but as things improved, we tried to be smart with what little money we could kind of come up with. And so that's exactly what happened. You remember the trucks we built, that
absolutely. Yeah, I was going to get to that.
Stuff. We were, we would get like a 20-foot box truck and convert it to something that, we could drive ourselves. So we weren't spending money in lavish ways. We were spending it in ways that were practical and kept us afloat, even though we were a very small band. We didn't have, we very briefly had managers, but not much of that. We just kind of, it just made more sense for us to do what we could, each of us as individuals, and contribute to that and use our money as wisely as we could. And ultimately that did sort of pay dividends, if you will, in that we built up to a place where we could launch the Blasting Room. And that was really a huge step forward for us in how we were able to, have yet more control over how our recordings sounded, and be able to offer that as a practical thing for other bands that like to work with us too. So it's awesome.
Yeah. Well, if you can take us back to around 1995, because, Pummel came out, and, from basically 87, when you joined Descendents, throughout the whole years with All up till 95, as you said, it was record, tour, pay some rent, go back out. It was just this cycle. I know what you guys were doing. And at what point was it like, okay, there's talk of getting Milo back? What set this in motion? How did Epitaph Records happen? Did Brett hear the demos that you did? And how'd that part transpire? Because you guys pretty much toured the Pummel record right up until you did Everything Sucks.
Totally. And it was interesting. So we had demoed about half of the songs that ended up being on Everything Sucks with Chad already.
Yes.
And we signed in 95 with Interscope, and almost immediately our A&R guy kind of bailed and just disappeared from the label and from the music scene in general. And so we were sort of, a band without an A&R guy at a major label is kind of in a tough position, because somebody else has to take it up, and they weren't invested in you the way the person that, brought you to the label in the first place would be. So we didn't have a strong champion at Interscope. We sent those demos to Interscope, and they didn't really dig them that much, and so the decision was made for us to part ways. Well, so that, and as you may have had happen in your experience, that takes a while. This isn't just like, okay, see you guys later, and hang up the phone and you're done. It doesn't go like that. So, contractual stuff, and there's all this stuff to work out. So we had this batch of songs that was done. And right about that time, Milo finished his PhD. And in a conversation, he contacted Bill and said, I've got some time right now. We could, before I need to like dive into my work life, we could do a record and do maybe some shows. And so that was kind of what happened. We found ourselves without a label, with Milo interested in doing something. So that we talked to Brett, longtime friend, of course. That was, he was like, well, yeah, okay, fine. Like, let's do that. I mean, I don't think we even had to send him any songs. I'm sure we did, but I mean, I don't think I think he would have been like, yeah, okay, this is pretty obviously going to be a good fit. So there was actually a phone conversation that I witnessed from one side where Chad and Milo got on the phone, and each guy picked off songs they were going to keep for, well, I'll take this one. And then Milo brought songs, and then there were a couple of more. And so that was kind of what happened there. It was, the Everything Sucks year, 97. It was just a 1-year blitzkrieg.
Oh yeah.
Warped Tour. We went out with you. We went out with all kinds of, we did laps. We just toured like madmen, and that was kind of how that all played out. Pretty funny.
To me, it's incredible because, and I had talked to Milo about this when he was on, you guys were just road dogging it, slogging it out year after year, not making any money. And then all of a sudden, did you ever think in your wildest dreams that those songs and all that work, all that groundwork you did years ago was going to turn into something like that Everything Sucks tour? Every night was packed. There's legions of fans that unfortunately weren't there for all, because it didn't have the Descendents name.
But it didn't have that, and that has always been a factor, as we all know. That is, and
Sure.
all is a complicated band. There's that, but there's also just some peculiar timing because right around 95, somewhere around 95 or so, I remember we played a show with Bad Religion and Green Day. Green Day played before all, ridiculous as that would sound, but they, at that time, were blowing up on the radio. The show, was already set up the way it was, and so it just went down the way it did, but they were just starting to blow up on the radio. So all of a sudden, punk rock is finally hitting, the radio. And understand that bands from my era, there was no expectation of even the remotest success for our bands. Not that kind of success. I mean,
right.
Success in our kind of band was just that you could do it at all and not put a roof on a house instead, or whatever. Like, like that was as good as it got. And you had no expectations of it really being a living other than a very, very kind of a small one, and you were fine with that. I wasn't complaining. I was stoked. So
sure.
I was perfectly happy with how it was. But anyway, things transpired the way they did. Green Day hit, Offspring hit, and all of a sudden, this new bunch of people, this new young group of people who are discovering punk rock, are looking into these bands and they're tracing the history of punk rock music. And of course, if you like melodic punk rock, somewhere along there, you're going to stumble upon Descendents in your journey. And
right.
So I look at it like this. There's the 1982, when Milo Goes to College came out. And of course, Carl and I weren't in the band. We were massive fans of that record, ridiculous fans of that.
So
record.
Cool. So cool.
So there's a group of people that loved the band from back then. And then maybe in a way, Descendents all kind of capped that record, maybe kind of brought a few new people into it because it was a different kind of a record. I don't know. That's hard to say. But without a doubt, we had a whole new thing starting at Everything Sucks. It was like a whole new group of interested young people discovering our band. And right when punk rock was blowing up and huge. So while, we certainly were never going to, garner the success of some massive band like Green Day, that wasn't going to happen. But certainly we got to go along for the ride while a lot of other bands were being discovered. And so it gave us a fan base. And so it's funny when we go out and play shows now as a senior band, if you will, as a legacy band, I've heard it's called.
Legacy band.
A legacy band. As a legacy band out there, as opposed to having, one period of known and then, maybe some trickle on like new people discovering you, we kind of have two groups of distinct people. And then, whoever they may turn on to the music. So, we still see teenagers at our shows that are, who knows how the hell they're finding this music, but it is happening still. And so, that's another interesting feature of Everything Sucks was that the band could have for a certain number of our fans, the band starts there, not in 82 with Milo Goes to College or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Probably you. Right. Or you'd have known us before that, but you know what I mean? Like not just after you, just a little bit younger than you. Everything Sucks is where you begin. If
right.
You like Descendents.
But I'll tell you, Everything Sucks made me God, I hate to have to pick, but it made me more of a Descendents fan. I was an all guy. You guys were my band. That was my thing. I saw you guys play. I never saw Descendents play. I was too young in the 80s. I saw all play. I don't know how many times.
That's my wife to a T. She loved Descendents. She had the records, but she was an all fan. She was an all fan. And then, of course, she was more than happy with what's happened since, but But that's exactly the same thing, timing wise, a certain age, that's
And
exactly true. And that's, of course, a much smaller group of people because all never, our some shows were a lot smaller. No, of course.
Yeah. You have a niche audience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And it for no other reason than just a different name and a different singer, but it's the same core three people. When I heard Everything Sucks for the first time, Less Than Jake was on tour in New York, staying on some kid's floor, and he had an advanced cassette of it, and I lost my mind. I couldn't believe what this record sounded like, which you brought up Andy Wallace before, Stefan. What was he costing a mix back then? Probably $1,500, $2,000 a mix.
Oh God, he
or more. And how did
more.
how did Brett at Epitaph? I mean, obviously he had made some money with Offspring and Rancid was blowing up at that time, but he must have had a lot of faith this project was going to do well.
Well, and he also he did, and he also had a good relationship with Andy Wallace because they had already worked together. And I think what he did is I think he went to Andy and went, I have this band. They're huge fans of what you do. They would love to work with you, but they don't have the kind of budget that you're used to. Do you have like a week? Let's blow this thing out fast. It's simple music. It's not laden with layering and, complication. It's very straightforward music. And so we mixed it in like 5 days. I mean, which is short by, and of course, those guys can mix fast. They can mix a record, but that isn't to say he wasn't thorough. He was insanely thorough, but it was a fairly quick mix, and we didn't have to pay what a lot of bands paid because we didn't take up that much time, and our thing was simple. We just hauled ass through it, and it was done quickly. But his musical instincts are good, so it just kind of worked. He knew how to make the thing work right off the bat. It was great. I
seem to remember either you or Bill or both of you telling me that you kind of were ghosting him during those sessions, like looking over his shoulder, trying to see what he was doing. Is that right?
A little bit, but to be fair, as responsible, let's say, producer type of people, our best utility was to not do that, was to stay away. We couldn't help but get in there and kind of watch once in a while and get the lay of the land and see what he's doing. Yeah. And, we of course learned an immense amount, and he was a guy who was very free with his knowledge. He was, hey, what, do you got preference on a kick drum mic? Yeah, I like to use it, blah, blah, blah. I mean, he'll tell you exactly what he did. He's right. He knows full well that even if he tells you every detail, it still won't sound the same either way. And he's right. It just doesn't work like that. He does his thing his way. He hears what he hears. He mixes in a very strange way. He mixes so quietly, you can barely hear it. It's fucking wild. It's crazy. Well, then he'll crank it up for a minute and go, how's the low end? Oh, low end's good. Turn it back down to almost nothing and then keep mixing. And I think, we did learn tons of stuff from just that, brief little 5 days, 7 days, whatever it was.
Yeah. And you jogged a memory a moment ago. That's right. He had mixed Bad Religion's record Stranger Than Fiction. So that's how that relationship happened with Brett. And that's so cool. Everything Sucks was recorded June, July of 96, released September 24th, 1996. And, Stefan, during this time period, you're way more prolific as a writer now. This was your only sole credit of writing on this record. It ended up being the first track on the album. And just want to know, why was the record Everything Sucks spelled SUCKS, but the song SUX? Was there a reason?
No, there was no reason. Maybe just to maybe for the hell of it, maybe we just like to spell shit wrong. Like we spelled our name wrong, Descendents isn't spelled with an E,
Right.
Yeah. I think we were just kind of goofing off, but the funny thing about that is that it's, and maybe I've told you this before, Everything Sucks is the first song I ever wrote.
What? I did not know that.
My history is that I had written a lot of music for the band, but I've always, never as many songs per record as the rest of the guys. And
right.
I'm not a particularly well-read person, or, I don't have a great turn of phrase or anything like that. So
you did write Strip Bar.
Yeah, that was, how that happened is that, and it's not a true story, by the way, that is not a true story. What happened is that Scott Reynolds I was bitching one night when we were all talking. He's like, what you should do? Write a song about a strip bar. And I said, okay. And I blurted that out and everyone started laughing. And so we made a song out of it.
Yeah. 8 seconds long.
That's very all.
1, 2, 3, 4.
I went to the strip bar, tried to grab her by the world, but a big guy beat me up and threw me out the back door of the strip bar.
So I had written, music and everybody had, contributed lyrics and worked with me on that part, but I had never written lyrics myself. And so when we were working on that record, really it wasn't because it was a Descendents record, but it was just that on our next record, I don't care what the fuck it is, I'm writing a complete song and bringing it to the band with lyrics.
That's awesome.
And so that is what Everything Sucks is. I wrote the music. The music just it was just kind of riffs that I worked out, and then I would play it over and over again, and eventually the Everything Sucks. Maybe I had said Everything Sucks at some point, like just as a phrase, because like I was having a shitty day. So, everything sucks. And so the Everything Sucks Today thing, it sort of maybe popped out at some point while I was just jamming the riff. And that was the nexus of the thing. Everything Sucks Today was the, and then I just built the rest of it around that. And it's funny because it, if you read stories about the Beatles, and of course, anything, to do with the Beatles is what I'm reading about probably.
Oh yeah.
That they were, that kind of thing happened all the time in that band. Somebody, they would hear somebody say something and they would write a song 8 days a week. That's, Hard Day's Night is something Ringo just spouted out at some point, is what I've always heard. And then they wrote the song around that. That was commonplace for their band. So that's sort of what this was. And I didn't know that people wrote in that way back then. It just happened. It kind of popped out of my mouth while I was jamming along and trying to sort of hum along and see if I could figure out, melodies or some kind of a thing I could sing over this music I'd written. And that came out. Well, then the rest of it sort of wrote itself, and the lyrics are really stupid. They're not, there's no fucking brain power going on in this. This was just spouting stuff off. But some of it was really based in reality. I tried to go, okay, well, like what does suck? What does suck? And a lot of what you hear in there is actually based on something real.
Yeah.
The tax man came and took my money. That was, I had spent, I had a little bit of money. I'd spent it all. And then I got this huge tax bill because I didn't know what a 1099 was. And so the tax man, now all my other bills are going to be late, which was true. My bills were piling up on me right then because I had never, I didn't save anything for taxes. I didn't even know what taxes were. I'd been living on fucking $5 a day for like years, So that was real. And the line, the horoscope told me lies this morning. When I was a kid, my mom would get the newspaper, and every day there was that little kind of a horoscope thing, and it would have, your sign, and it would have like either a smiley face or an indifferent face or a frowny face. And the horoscope told me lies this morning is more like if you had looked at it and it said you had a happy face, but it ended up sucking, your day ended up turning to shit. It was just, like really basic, crude little ideas like that. But, and Carl kind of helped me. I think he even contributed one of the lines in it somewhere. And so it just sort of fell together in this goofy, stupid way. And I chose to take it in a weird direction, which is that in our band, any of us will bring songs in, I'm not going to say varying states of completion, but in varying states of how much detail we have already amassed for the song in our head. So to give contrast to that, the song She's My Ex by Bill, that song, he wrote every single stroke of the guitar in that. He knew exactly what he wanted. Clean Sheets is kind of that way too. Other ones, he might be like, nah, I'm kind of, you can kind of find your own thing here. This is cool. But on a lot of songs, it's very rigid, right? And then other ones, it's pretty loosey-goosey. And Carl is usually kind of in the middle of that. He's like, nah, come up with your own thing. Ooh, I would like to hear this kind of a thing. Cool, okay. And then we try to accommodate each other. Well, Everything Sucks, I did it Bill style. I wrote like like the drum parts. I was like, the drums go like this. I was like completely
cool.
Here it is.
Yeah.
This is my, this is my magnus opus, or whatever, like the one song I'll probably ever actually be able to write in my life. But so that's a funny thing about Everything Sucks. And so when we're done mixing, and we had asked Brett if he wanted to be involved in maybe helping sequence the record, like, hey, you got any opinions on the song sequence?
It's funny you say that real quick. And the, the Wikipedia page for this record, it says sequencing assistants, Brett Gurewitz.
Brett Gurewitz.
You got a credit. Yeah.
We, because Brett's a smart guy, why not ask a guy who knows what he's doing? And we tend to be like all just kind of crammed up our own asses, so we don't, it was good to get some outside perspective from somebody who we trusted.
Yeah.
And so he and others brought up the idea of putting it first on the song. And I was like, you guys are nuts. This song is stupid. And like, I thought this song would be completely buried. And if it even made the cut, because I didn't even expect that. So for it to lead the record, much less have the record named that, I was just scratching my head. Like, have you guys lost your fucking minds? Like, have you listened to this thing? Like, this is ridiculous. It's like a joke, I barely scraped together an actual song. And so it was, that was definitely my perspective at the time on it. So it's funny that the whole thing played out the way it did, because it does actually work as a first song. And I wouldn't have thought that it could have. It
does. And it works as a first song live. You guys open up, I watched you guys at Brack Rock a couple years ago, and the place just explodes when you go into this.
It's perfect for that, for firing off the set. I'd say we do it almost every time. Maybe someday we'll change that, but for now we go with it.
Hey everybody, everything most definitely does not suck in the next part of this conversation with Stefan. So stay tuned. We'll be right back after a few words from our sponsors.
Looking to elevate your music career? DistroKid is a digital music distribution service that enables musicians to distribute their music to online stores and streaming platforms such as Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, Amazon, Tidal, and many more. DistroKid collects earnings and payments, sending them to you, the artist. With DistroKid, artists unlock a world of possibilities. From easily paying collaborators with splits to securing your music with DistroLock, DistroKid covers all bases. Plus, you can promote your releases with Hyperfollow and create eye-catching visuals with a Spotify Canvas generator, all for free. But that's not all. Introducing the DistroKid app, now available on iOS and Android. Artists can manage their releases, view streaming stats, and withdraw earnings, all from the palm of their hand. And for those looking to perfect their sound, check out Mixia. With its simple interface and customizable mastering options, artists can make their music sound polished and professional within minutes. And don't forget about Instant Share, DistroKid's newest feature. Share large files securely with collaborators, producers, and more, ensuring your music streams at the highest quality. Ready to take your music to the next level? Download the DistroKid app and explore their suite of tools today. Plus, listeners can enjoy 30% off their first year by visiting distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes. That's distrokid.com/VIP/DeMakes.
When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of ShopPay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
More rewards, more savings. With American Express Business Gold, earn up to $395 back in annual statement credits on eligible purchases at select shipping, food delivery, and retail subscription merchants, including the $155 Walmart Plus monthly membership credit and $240 flexible business credit. Enjoy the benefits of membership with the Amex Business Gold Card. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold Card. Built for business by American Express.
Comcast is committed to bringing access to the internet to all Americans, including rural communities across the country, like Sussex County, Delaware.
We were being left behind. Everybody around us seemed to have internet, but we did not. High-speed internet is one of those good things that we needed to help us move our farming, our small businesses, our recreation forward.
Learn more about how we're bringing our next-generation network to more people across the country at ComcastCorporation.com/investment in America.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
And now, back to the show.
I want to thank you for taking this lead up. Usually we're already into the nuts and bolts of the song by now, but I felt this was needed. I didn't know that this was the first real complete song that you brought to the band. You call it your magnus opus at 1 minute and 26 seconds, by the way, which I didn't know if we'd have a full episode here. So I kind of wanted to do this lead up with you, but talking about the demo real quick. And I know that we're going to play a little bit of the demo that Chad had sang on. And if you haven't, to the listeners, haven't checked out the Everything Sucks demos, when I found these on YouTube a couple years ago, I lost my mind. It's so cool because for this song in particular, this demo is pretty identical to the album version. The guitar solo is a bit different. It's panned left on the demo, but it's panned right on the album. Other than that, I mean, it's pretty much the same song.
Everything sucks today. Praying someone out of his man off. Everything sucks today. Got up on the wrong side of life is slow.
Again, 1 minute and 26 seconds, standard tuning. There's 4 bars of just guitar panned hard left. On the 3rd bar, Bill comes in kind of like with a hi-hat count, and then bang, you're into verse 1.
Got up this morning to make some coffee. Everything sucks today. Waiting someone out of hit man off me. Everything sucks today. Got up on the wrong side of life this morning. Nothing today is gonna go my way. I was going on the last this morning. I don't think anything's gonna be okay today.
I call this a verse and a pre-chorus here, Stefan, before the chorus. I don't think it's all a verse.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I never really delineated the parts, very well, because it wasn't like, okay, the verse goes like this, the pre-chorus goes like this, the chorus goes like this. It wasn't really like that. So much of the music that I love, Black Flag and bands like that, there really is not exactly a cut and dried, that the staples of songwriting are not really thought about. And we might go, well, we call this part the bridge and we call this part the chorus. I mean, if it's Silly Girl, you know where the chorus is, but whatever. Sure. Clean Sheets, there's a defined chorus. But some songs, they just really kind of go and they don't really have that. And, in Everything Sucks case, I don't think it has a bridge. I guess the solo is the bridge. The
solo is really it. But I'm gonna read what I consider the first verse here, lyric wise, and I'm gonna have you set this up for us. Got up this morning to make some coffee. Everything sucks today. Prayed someone hired a hitman to off me. Everything sucks today. And I got to say, the coffee thing with you guys is not a shtick. First of all, before we started talking today, Stefan goes, "Hey, Chris, do you got a second? I need to go make a cup of coffee." I said, yeah, you need to make 2 cups of coffee.
Yeah, if you hear slurping, that's what that is.
So like you said, this is kind of autobiographical here.
Okay, so the reference in that first line, I don't know if, maybe, I mean, I know I experience this. I'm sure anybody else would too, that sometimes you just wake up and you just feel unease. Like like today's just going to be kind of shanky. It's not, you know what I mean? You don't wake up with a spring in your step and it, you're like, something feels off. It's that feeling. That's what that line was about. You try to get up and just have a normal day like any other day. But you can just tell there's something off about it. That's what that's where that line came from, or that section of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And basically you're saying, everything's effed, but you're not saying it. You're saying everything sucks. And who can't relate to that? Sometimes everything sucks.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Sometimes everything just kind of doesn't go your way. And it just is, you can't get a break. And one of that kind of a day where it's just like kind of one thing after another is just.
And sometimes the hit you over the head lyric, which it seems like Brett, Gurewitz gravitated to the simplicity of this. It's punk rock. It's catchy as hell. You were kind of overthinking, like, this is just going to be buried on the record, maybe not even on the album. He's going, no, this is the lead off track.
And so I was mortified because, my stupid, dumb lyrics, or whatever. It just, what, but, it took me a while because there was another song from that ended up not making the record called Shattered Milo. And I'll give you a little bit of context about the song Shattered
great
Milo.
Song. Great
so
song.
Shattered Milo, the first version that they recorded of that was for the Grow Up record. And then they recorded it again for the Enjoy record. And
what?
Yeah,
know that.
So there's two different versions of it. And I believe that maybe the Enjoy version is floating around out there somewhere, but I've never heard any. I've heard the Grow Up version a lot, and I don't think that's made it out there into the world.
Not that I've heard.
Wow, I look in her eyes, but I can't see my place in her is a mystery. Struggle as I try to say the words I know she won't believe. Growing tired of this game, I must know what she wants from me.
When I first heard that, I was like, holy shit, this song is awesome. So I loved that song, and I was absolutely adamant. When Bill said to me, hey, I just got off the phone with Milo, and I think he wants to do this, the first thing that popped into my head, fuck yes, we're going to do Shattered Milo. Yes. I'm pushing for it. Even if it doesn't make the record, we're recording this one because I love this song so much, and I wanted it to be there. I was pushing for that to be the opener the entire time we made the record, the whole time we mixed it, mastering, everything. I was like, I'm telling you guys, this is song one, Shattered Milo. This will absolutely rip.
Why don't you give me a sign? Walk with me, smile. Just let me know. Do you like my act? And am I putting on a good show? 'Cause that's what you'll get from me.
And so when they were like, I think we should use Everything Sucks, I'm like, you guys are on drugs. Like, we have the perfect opening song. And, so it was, kind of, but after I sat with it for a while, I was like, okay, I just, I don't like come around easily. It takes me a long time to sort of gestate and chew on an idea like that. But eventually I saw the merit in it.
Another track that was left off the record, Lucky. I love
Lucky,
that song too.
I know.
These days things don't seem to go my way. What would I do if I hadn't already got lucky once with you? If I hadn't already got lucky once with you.
The thing is with that one, there was a misunderstanding on the three, Bill, Carl, and I about an arrangement thing. Milo had maybe either not locked down at the time, and we went ahead and recorded it the wrong way. And he was like, let's leave that one off and we'll revisit that one later. And so we did record it again for Cool to Be You. And then when we play it live now, we don't do it like either of the two versions that was recorded. We do it totally different in a whole different way. And we do play it once in a while. And that is, it's a bummer that didn't make the record, because I actually think that was one of the strongest songs and one of Milo's best, as good as anything he's ever done, for sure.
Yeah. I absolutely love that song. And verse one here, after the intro, stereo guitars are in, bass and drums just pummeling you. And then we get into pre-chorus one.
I was told on the last this morning. I don't think anything's gonna be
Got up on the wrong side of life this morning. Nothing today is going to go my way. Horoscope told me lies this morning. I don't think anything is going to be okay.
Today.
And today. And the bass playing here is just off the chain. Got anything about these lyrics here, Stefan?
I think that's just a continuation of the idea that like you've kind of woken up and realized you're having an off day. You're having an off time. And you can just tell, like, and so you focus, you tend to just only see the negative stuff that's in front of you, the problematic things that are impeding your progress forward or whatever, the rocks getting, chucked in your day. Like that's really kind of what that's about. And that thing about the horoscope, that sort of ties into that. Like really, this is a collection of lines about just having a shitty day. That's really all it was. I just, wrote down a bunch of stupid lines. A shitty day.
And I'll tell you, you jogged another memory of mine when you talked about that horoscope. My mom, I'd be eating breakfast as a kid and she'd say, "Did you read your horoscope today?" And she'd slide the paper over to me. And and I used to read it and I always kind of thought I was corny too.
Well, the funny thing though, is that I read it, and what would happen is after a while, I found myself looking for either the good thing or the bad thing to have happened. And after a while I said, I'm not reading this anymore. Like, I'm sure I have caused myself bad days that didn't need to be there because I was like looking at this thing that doesn't even make any sense. So, that's all bullshit anyway, but I was just a kid, so I quit reading it at a certain point because I would, if I had a frowny face, I would have a shitty day inevitably.
Well, pre-chorus one, after you get out of it, it says today, and it launches into the chorus.
Today, everything sucks today. Everything sucks today. Everything sucks today.
Everything sucks today. Everything sucks today. Everything sucks today. And it sounds here, Stefan, that the vocals are double tracked in the chorus, but it doesn't sound anywhere else. Do you recall?
I don't recall that. I wouldn't be surprised if they were. That's pretty, reinforcement of like key lines is I think a thing that, we're certainly not above doing, like it just kind of gives a dynamic because, this kind of music is not always very dynamic, as it's just like, wow, the guitar's full blast. There's no like quiet part. We're just like the whole time. So this is a way to introduce at least some level of dynamic activity into a song. And so I'm almost sure you're right.
I'll tell you something. On the way to the gym this morning, I cranked this song. My ears were bleeding and I'm like, it just still sounds amazing 25, 26 years later. It sounds so good. But I did notice that your guitar tone was scratchier during this period. You've gotten a lot cleaner since then. And your guitar tone, I think, has gotten bigger because of it.
Well, this was a strange way we recorded this record. We didn't use any cabinets on this record. The guitar sound on Everything Sucks. It's a 73 Gibson Les Paul that I found right as we were starting to make the record. I got it for a very good price. It was a Les Paul Deluxe that had been modified. Normally that has the smaller, what they call a mini humbucker. And somebody had routed this out and put in what I was told at the time were some kind of like Ibanez humbuckers that were like maybe a higher output than like, say, a traditional PAF kind of a pickup or something, a little bit, maybe something along the lines of a DiMarzio super distortion humbucker, something like that. Okay. And it has a very forward sound, that guitar. It sounds excellent. It's got a really unique and interesting sound. It doesn't stay in tune for shit because it's a Les Paul, but like as far, I have to tune it like every 8 strums or something, but like it sounds very good. And then the amplifiers, I don't know if anybody wanted to get this techie, but I'm a techie guy, so I like that. The amplifiers, there's a JCM 900 Marshall on one side, and a Mesa Boogie tri-axis preamp on the other side. The interesting thing is that we didn't use any guitar cabinets on the record. We used a cabinet simulating red box made by a company called Hughes and Kettner called a red box.
Oh,
and the red box is something we had discovered it and started using it live. And it has a very, very strong focused mid-range voice. very mid-rangey. In fact, and we didn't tell Andy, that we had done it this way. We just said, okay, he's got the tracks he's going to mix them. How he's going to mix, what the heck? So it's kind of a unique and odd guitar sound. It's very forward, very in your face. And since Andy Wallace is brilliant, he found a way to sort of carve the mid-range down and make sure he's a bass player, by the way. And so he, you'll notice on his records that the bass always holds a good place on the records. And that is one of, I think, the great hallmarks of his mixing is that you can always hear the bass. And of course, in our band, the bass is massive. The bass carries most of the melody in our band. So it's important. And so he carved out that guitar sound in that way and that the bass would still work. And that's part of that sound, but it is a brighter, probably more overdriven guitar sound. I had been pretty overdriven on Pummel too. Pummel has a lot of overdrive for sure.
And don't get me wrong. I love the sound. I'm just observing, evolution as a guitar player, and it's been fascinating to watch, but I still love the sound on Everything Sucks.
Well, it's funny that is the record that more people go, that guitar sound. Like, I couldn't tell you how many people have just been like, that guitar sound. I love that guitar sound. Like,
it rips your head off.
Yeah. And a lot of it is just because it is a little bit of an unorthodox tone in that it's incredibly mid-range focused. It has virtually no low end in it at all, because I don't really need any. I don't, I'm not trying to be metal. Like, that's not my scene at all. So I'm not trying to gung, gung, gung and get down there with the bass guitars. I would prefer to have them, because we have an active relationship between the guitar and the bass in our band, and Carl's such a fabulous bass player. we want that stuff to be kind of equal. We're trying to get a place where both of these things can live. But as you know, distorted guitars, they are one volume, unless you're talking about with a bunch of palm muting where it's gung, 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 like a metal sound. Okay, well, maybe then it might have dynamics. But otherwise, a distorted guitar like the one on that record, it just lays there, and so you have to work around it. I know this isn't probably a track you were hoping to get into, but there it is.
No,
that tells you a little bit about just one of the many confluence of interesting things that comes into making a song.
Oh no, I mean I could nerd out with you on this alone for hours, but we'll spare the listeners.
We'll spare everybody that. There's a lot of podcasts of me talking about guitar amps. There's plenty of that.
After chorus one, we go right into verse 2. Right girl didn't call, and the wrong one's knocking. Everything sucks today. Flat tire on my car, so I guess I'm walking. Everything sucks today.
Yeah, so the first line is just utter bullshit. That's just like a made up, like that could happen, but that wasn't a reality of my life at all. And then the flat tire actually did happen, though. That is real. That, that was on my list of things that suck, that can really fuck your day up. That's one of them right there.
Yeah. But again, for something that you're saying, it's kind of juvenile as a lyric. I mean, who can't relate to every one of these lines so far?
Yeah, exactly.
We've all been there, getting into pre-chorus too. You touched on this a moment ago. Taxman came and took my money. Now all my other bills are going to be late. My girlfriend's moving in this morning. Now, I don't think anything is going to be okay.
Okay, now to be fair, that was also a fake line, but it was different than that. Girlfriend's moving out this morning. That's what, I just made that up. It was just bullshit. My girlfriend's moving out this morning. I don't think.
Oh yeah, it's out. Sorry, I said in.
Well, no. What happened is I wrote it as out. And in that demo with Chad, he changed it to in. And, he was just joking. He was laughing about it. And it was just a stupid demo. So it didn't matter. But anyway, so that's how it ended up being in. Milo kept it. And there we go.
That's awesome.
And then it's the same, I don't think anything's going to be okay today.
Yeah. And then we get into chorus 2, which is everything sucks today, repeated 3 times.
Today, everything sucks today. Everything sucks today. Everything sucks today.
Then we get into the solo. The stereo guitars are present here during the solo, but they're tucked down in the mix to make room for the solo. 4 bars in, Milo says everything sucks kind of in a very disinterested tone, like everything sucks.
Everything sucks. Yeah.
Yep. And the guitar solo's panned mostly right for 8 bars. Chad coined something when he was on the podcast that had me rolling, and it had a lot of our listeners in our Facebook group talking about it, had people laughing. It pertains to your solo here. He coined you as having a style that's your solos sound like Chuck Berry having a stroke, and and that's what's going on here. It's a classic Stephen solo. You know, your playing is. You know, I always loved Black Flag. I loved Greg Ginn. I loved the atonal stylings of his solos, but kind of took it a little too far for me. I was still a pop kid, and you kind of blended those two things. It's kind of like you took Greg Ginn and the Beatles and did this more for your solos and maybe threw some Chuck Berry in there. I love it.
All the first stuff I learned on the guitar when I was a kid, and I started playing pretty young, but the first solo stuff I learned was definitely Chuck Berry. It was all pentatonic stuff. And the first songs I learned how to play on guitar were mostly from the American Graffiti soundtrack track. So like Johnny Be Good is one of the first songs I ever learned. And so, you know, there's no doubt that style of guitar playing is a huge factor for me. Well, then Greg obviously is a huge inspiration for me and I love a lot of fusion music. I like a lot of guitar players that sort of go off the rails, but another unsung, at least within our generation, my and your generations of punk rock, is earlier, the great Robert Quine, who played guitar in Richard Hell and the Voidoids.
Yeah.
You know, leave it, it's time, take it.
Deeply in great, classic blues, based guitar playing, who would deliberately stab the song, I'm going to call it, during a solo with some just like let it happen without worry, no structure, complete just anarchy and find its way back into the solo or, and kind of in and out of that. And that, equally is an inspiration and very much so in the case of Everything Sucks, it is very much like kind of just a typical blues-based solo up to the point that you mentioned. And then that's exactly what it is. And this is something I do a lot in solos where I just, I'm writing something in the studio. I'm going, okay, I like this part. I like this part. And then I always try somewhere to just go to a place while I'm fucking around with my solo that I don't know what's going to happen. That it's a 50-50 shot into just completely wrecking the whole thing and crashing the car or having it work. And if it does work, I learn something from it. And a lot of times then I go, oh, whoa, I could totally do that. And it's, and it does fit, or it might just shit the bed and I have to not use it. But in the case of that one, it worked. That's it. That one, it's, that, and then it goes back into, that part, that last little section is all fairly stock Chuck Berryisms, but that little section right after he says everything sucks. That's me like just kind of deliberately going off the rails to I don't know where and seeing what happens.
Yeah. And the first time I saw All play, I felt like at any moment this could derail watching you as a guitar player. It was just so frenetic and just, I'm waiting for it to fall apart, but it never did. And I mean that in the utmost compliment. It's so,
thank you.
Your style is absolutely killer. And I wanted to ask, I had mentioned earlier that it differed, the solo on the demo, from what happened on Everything Sucks, the actual record. Do you remember recording that solo? Did you take a bunch of passes and Andy or not Andy, but Bill or someone in the studio said, this is the one? Or do you remember just writing this out?
No, this was something I would have worked on in the studio. Generally, I don't have anything worked out for solos until the day I have to. I'll work everything else out hard. I'll really define the rhythmic part, the rhythm parts, and I'll really try to do that well. But the solos, I kind of like to do those last minute. And so I'll dive in and mess around with it until I find something I like. And so that would have been, several passes probably. Let's say I took 6 or 7 shots at it until I found something I liked and went, oh, right there, that one feels good. Let's keep that one, and then just moved on from it.
That's awesome. Well, right out of the guitar solo, we get into pre-chorus 3, which this part of the song's so strong, it happens 3 times. I love this part, and that's why I'm giving it its own title as a pre-chorus. This is the same lyric as pre-chorus 1. Got up on the wrong side of life this morning. Nothing today is going to go my way. Horoscope told me lies this morning. I don't think anything is going to be okay today. We get into the last chorus. Everything sucks today 3 times, and by this time, Bill's just smashing on the crash, and it's just bombastic. It's about as loud as it gets, and then it comes to this abrupt end with these dun 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 dunts that happened, and bow down bow.
Yeah.
Today, everything sucks today. Everything sucks today. Everything sucks today.
Then it's over. A minute, 26 seconds later, you're just breakneck. You're like, what just hit me? And I'll say it again. This is the first new, at that time, Descendents song I had heard. Didn't even know you guys had a record out. This guy had an advanced cassette. This is pre-internet. Just didn't know. We're out in a van touring. I'm closed off from the world pretty much. And this guy has this cassette, and this is the first song I heard. Blown away. Honored to talk about it today. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening to it and for having me on. It's at least a song with a funny backstory.
Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd like to leave the listeners before we break here? What you got going on in the world of Stefan or the band touring? What's happening?
So, okay, on Everything Sucks, I wrote Everything Sucks completely, and it did inspire enough confidence in me to try to do some more co-writing and contribute more lyrically. And so the song Sick of Me, which is something that Bill and I worked on together. So that's a mixture of Bill and I's lyrics and my music. So on that record, that was more or less the second song I wrote, except that was a co-write, with Bill.
And you also wrote the instrumental track at the end.
Yeah,
the
grand
track,
theme.
Grand theme. Yes.
Theme. Yeah. And maybe there was something else, but I don't think so. I think that it might have just been that stuff. But
that's all you were credited with online.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. But to give a little bit of perspective, I mean, when I was a kid, what I wanted to be was like a Lennon or a Fogerty or I wanted to be a person that sang and played guitar. I wanted to sing and play electric guitar like John Lennon. That's what I wanted to do with my life. And I found myself hilariously, inept at lyrics, and I'm not a great singer, but I really enjoyed doing it. So eventually guitar took over, and it really did take over. I was really into it, and I wanted to be a really good guitar player, and I focused on that, and I really kind of put any songwriting aspirations aside. Well, by the time I wrote Everything Sucks, I was like not over being a guitar player, but I wanted to write music. I wanted to write full songs. I wanted to because you see a song, like, let's take a song like Hope or Bikeage or Get the Time or, Thank You. Anything that people really, really connect with, let's say, out of our catalog. This is a thing where I have been able to witness a friend of mine write something that connected to people in a very powerful way. Guitar connects to guitar players in a very powerful way, and maybe a small amount of other audience members. But I've always wanted to be able to do it more like a songwriter would and connect on all of those ways. So I have tried and tried and tried, and I have made progress in that.
Oh, yeah.
And in a funny way, I found a certain way that I can write things. I'm still struggle very, very much lyrically, but though I am making some improvement. But as you well know, having sang on it, I made a whole record where I at least had melodic ideas and occasional, I had maybe a chorus, like on the song that Chad, this record we're talking about is 7 Degrees of Stephen Egerton, which is
that I was honored to be asked to sing for. Thank you.
Yes, that Chris sang and did a great song. Vinny came up with great words. Roger, the whole thing worked out perfectly.
There's nothing left to believe in, and sometimes you have to stop and believe it's only print on paper, and if happiness is bought and paid for, maybe it's only faith that shapes us day to day. If it's only words on paper, and salvation is bought and paid for, maybe it's only faith that takes who you became, shakes you awake, keeps you living for today.
That record, I wrote the melodies to probably, 3/4 or maybe even more of what's on there. And so I was feeling confident, I grew in confidence melodically and how, the melody and the music fit together. Lyrically, still some challenge. I got better. I wrote my second complete song. That's the song that Milo sings on that record.
She's got everything.
She's got everything. Yeah, that was my second complete song. So
smile, a touch that puts my heart to rest, something in her eyes, and I already bought the diamond ring. She's got everything.
Since then, though, I've written a lot of songs, a lot of songs.
Yeah,
so
I've noticed.
So now I have, I've been sitting on probably, 100 of which maybe 50 are worth a listen, which is that's actually a pretty good number. So, for Hypercalf, I wrote, I gave a lot of stuff to the band, not all of it complete lyrically, but maybe partial lyrics, that kind of thing. Now we have recorded a whole bunch of other songs where I have some actual lyrics, like, I think we've already recorded, Bill and Carl haven't done their songs yet. Milo and I have done ours. And I think we already have like 30 songs. I don't know, like a lot, 20, a bunch between us. And, he wrote a bunch with me because, he's like, here, send me some. So I sent him off to Milo and, and I'd have the melody and even like maybe even some vowels and consonants, some sounds that I could hear. And he would fill out those sounds into actual words. And then some of them I have complete lyrics for. Anyway, we're working on a record. I've already recorded most of mine, but I have a bunch more I want to contribute to it already. So nowadays I write quite a few songs, and in a few days I'm going to turn 58. I'm hoping that by 60 I can call myself a fully formed songwriter. That's my goal.
Well, I love it, and I can't wait to hear it. And about the album, 7 Degrees of Stephen Egerton, for those of you, go check it out. Check out the song Sunny Disposition that Scott Reynolds sang on Top 5 All Songs that was never released by All. That song is, I still put it on very often. I love that song.
Yeah, he nailed those lyrics. And the funny thing about those lyrics,
his harmonies are haunting in that song.
They're
all
perfect.
The oohs and the verses. Yeah.
And I told him what I wanted it to be about. That's the funny thing. I gave him the song with the melody played on the guitar, just played single notes. Here's how the vocal melody goes.
Oh, that's great.
And then I said, and here's what I think it should be about. And he just ran with it. And he was like, dude, this was easy. I mean, the melody was already done and I knew what it was going to be about. All I had to do was fill in the blanks. And I knew it was going to be called Sunny Disposition.
You're a melody. You contaminate the purest part of me. Nobody's flawless. No one gets through without a single scar. I'll love you regardless of how ridiculous I know you are, but I will never open up my soul and take you in. Can't let you turn your back, can't let you in. I won't do it, 'cause I know you're on a mission to wreck my sunny disposition.
That was the only thing I had was that one line. You're on a mission to wreck my sunny disposition. That was all I had for him. And he was like, great, filled the rest of it out himself. He had it to me in, 2 days or something. And it was awesome. So yeah, that was a fun thing for sure.
Amazing song. Check it out. And once again, thank you so much. I'm being the fan right now. As the fan, thank you. And as my friend, I love you. You know that. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Chris. And we'll do this again sometime. Maybe I'll have another song we can do.
Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Stephen Egerton, but don't go anywhere. There's lots more Chris DeMakes a Podcast after a few words from our sponsors.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin at 16 weeks. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
When did making plans get this complicated? It's time to streamline with WhatsApp, the secure messaging app that brings the whole group together. Use polls to settle dinner plans. Send event invites and pin messages so no one forgets Mom's 60th. And never miss a meme or milestone. All protected with end-to-end encryption. It's time for WhatsApp. Message privately with everyone. Learn more at whatsapp.com.
This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Checking off the boxes on your to-do list is a great feeling. And when it comes to checking off coverage, a State Farm agent can help you choose an option that's right for you. Whether you prefer talking in person, on the phone, or using the award-winning app, it's nice knowing you have help finding coverage that best fits your needs. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Prime delivery is fast. How fast are we talking? We're talking puzzle toys and lick pad delivered so fast you can get this puppy under control fast. We're talking chew toys at your door without really waiting fast. Pee pads, cooling mat, and peg hammer fast and fast. And there's training TREATS faster than you can say sit fast. And now we can all relax and order these matching hoodies to get cozy and cute fast. Fast free delivery. It's on Prime.
Let's play Burlington's Guess That Price. Back to school means back to saving. We're bringing you kids' jeans starting at, hold on a minute, just $11.99. Burlington's acing this test. What about character backpacks? We've got them starting at $12.99. Burlington's done it again. How about sneakers for the kids? A-plus brands and right on trend starting at $11.99. Saving is now in session. Burlington, deals, brands, wow! Styles and selections vary by location.
Lowe's knows you've got a job to do, and we help get it done. With the MyLowe's Pro Rewards program, eligible members save more with volume discounts on qualifying orders through a quote of $2,000 or more. Join for free today. Lowe's, we help, you save. Offer can't be combined with any other discount, contract, and/or special pricing. Exclusions, more terms, and restrictions apply. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Do you like to laugh, geek out on music, and learn all about that band or artist who had that one song back in the day, but then seemed to fall off the face of the earth? If so, you need to subscribe to One Hit Thunder. Together with an array of interesting and hilarious guests, we do a weekly dive into one-hit wonders like Eiffel 65's Blue, Krayshawn's Gucci Gucci, EMF's Unbelievable, Delamitri's Roll to Me, Los Del Rio's Macarena, Musical Youth's Pass the Dutchie, and even Patrick Swayze's She's Like the Wind. So are you subscribed to One Hit Thunder or what? As Desiree would say, you gotta be. And as K7 would encourage, you gotta come baby come and join in on the fun of the One Hit Thunder podcast.
Come baby come, baby baby come, come. Come baby come, baby baby come.
As we near the end of the show, here's a band you might not know.
Welcome to this week's Band You Might Not Know. If you'd like your band to be considered for Chris DeMakes a Podcast, all you have to do is email your best song via MP3 only and a short bio to bandyoumighttnotknow@gmail.com. This week's featured artist is East of June, featuring Emily Rath on vocals, Dirk Lance on bass, and Kyle Mortensen on guitar. Their new 5-song EP, Omens and Signs, is available now on all streaming platforms. Here's a snippet of their song, Believe.
Maybe when you want it too much, all the shades of red will make you color blind. All I need now is a reason to believe there's a way out, and I'm strong enough to leave. I'm gonna burn this motherfucker down, and I'll go and you know it was me. Just watch me now, this is true and you better believe.
The Wrap with Chris and Chris.
Man, on Chris DeMakes a Podcast, we're getting the story of the Descendents and all from every perspective. We only have one more to go now. We just got to get Carl and we'll have the complete set.
That's right. And then we'll go after the other all singers. We'll get Dave Smalley and Scott Reynolds at some point and have the full Monty. But yeah, it's been great.
I love the story in this episode about how they took the advance for all Pummel and used it to build a studio. That's so smart. Why weren't we all doing that? And it's so cool to me that they took all the time to learn recording. I mean, these guys are the cream of the crop when it comes to recording.
There's not another band that Less Than Jake learned more from than the Descendents. I know I've talked about it a bunch on the podcast. I know I've talked about it in the after parties, probably to the point where the listeners are sick of hearing me talk about it, but I can't say it enough what this band, what they did for us, what they did for a lot of bands. I had mentioned that they were the blueprint. They were out there playing these places where, people weren't making money on punk rock in the 80s. It wasn't a viable income stream. I mean, they were living hand to mouth, tour to tour, album to album. And by the time we were running with them on the Everything Sucks tour, just watching them every night, how they operated, there was no fat in the operation at all. It was as lean as possible. They bought box trucks and converted them with bunks, and so they weren't spending money on hotels. And by that point, they were in their early to mid 30s. They were tired of sleeping on floors. They wanted their own space. So everything they were doing, we just kind of, followed to a T almost. It was remarkable.
I've said it before. These guys are the textbook example of how to be a long-lasting, successful band. Spent their money in practical ways. Man, building their own beds in the back of a box truck, that's genius. That's awesome.
It was. And maybe early days, I had heard some stories. They were, they were young and a little bit wild, but by the time we had caught up with them, it wasn't about drinking and carousing. These guys were it was all about the music. It was about the gear. They were in there. They didn't have, fancy technicians and stuff. They had one roadie, Bugface, Daniel Snow, which you talked about. Daniel passed away recently. And, but outside of Bug, they were their own techs. Bill set up his drums and just, again, watching that machine every night and how seriously they took it. It was great.
In it for all the right reasons. And that number one reason being the music, be it writing the songs or recording songs, every right and pure reason to be a musician without all the other things. I'm sure there's a little bit of fun had too, but yeah, I thought it was cool. He talked about how in that punk rock boom of the mid 90s that young people were discovering punk rock and going back and discovering the Descendents. It's kind of got like they got that second wind of being a band. And I was over here with my hand up being, that was me. That you're describing me. I was that age. I was 14, 15 years old, and I'm going back and discovering this band that to me was a new band.
No, and it's incredible on that Everything Sucks tour. I mean, I was 23 years old, 24 maybe, and the audience that was showing up was 27, 28 to 35 years old. Those were all the fans from back in the day, plus newer fans, but that was different for us. A 35-year-old to a 23-year-old, that's a big difference, and it was a different demographic that Less Than Jake. We were playing to teenagers at that point. I can't say again what that tour did for our band. It just we would go back to those markers we played with the Descendents, and our audience had doubled.
That's awesome. You guys had the full gamut. You guys are bringing the younger people. They were bringing a little bit older than the younger people. That's awesome. Perfect planning on, I don't know if it was just happenstance and it happened that way, but what a perfectly planned tour.
No, I think that there was definitely some strategy behind it. I know Brett Gurewitz was definitely heavily involved in the marketing that time, and probably had a say in which bands they could take out. And Less Than Jake was selling a few records then, so I think it was a good pairing.
How cool is it that the first complete song that Stefan wrote became not only the first track on the album, but also the name of the album? That had to inspire some confidence in him. It sounds like it did, right?
I think initially he was just completely like he said, what are these guys on drugs? How could this be? What are you guys hearing that I'm not? But I think it stood the test of time. Like I said, I saw him at a festival in Belgium called Brack Rock a couple years ago, and they opened with that song, and it's just a full goosebump moment. It's like the place just went bananas when they opened with it.
Yeah, he was being a little self-deprecating about the lyrical content of this song. And I know that Descendents and all have some pretty deep songs, but also the fun, relatable, in-your-face punk rock songs are a big thing that people love about both bands.
Mm-hmm. Well, all the lyrics, like I said, right girl didn't call and the wrong one's knocking, flat tire on my car, so I guess I'm walking. Just who can't relate to just everyday life things? And then the lyric, everything sucks today. And I think that's ultimately what everyone was gravitating towards. Brett Gurewitz heard that, and he's not thinking that this is juvenile or simplistic. He's just hearing this song that's just completely running you over and going, yeah, this is going to open the record. Why not?
Something he said that I completely related to is he talked about how he was just playing around. He had this song idea, and that line, everything sucks, it just came out. And then he built the rest of the song around that line. I thought to myself, I'm pretty sure that's how I've written every song I've ever written. I'm playing around, and then something comes out of me. I don't know what it is. Maybe it just phonetically sounds good or something, and then I'm like, oh, I like that, and then I base an entire song, all the rest of the lyrics, around that one thing that came out of me. Do you do things that way, Chris, or do you come in with a concept?
Well, no, all the time. I think a lot of songwriters do. In fact, we've explored that a little bit on this show, where sometimes you'll go to write the real lyrics because the stuff you were just kind of spouting off the top of your head in front of the mic on a demo, and you get in there and everyone's like, well, what was wrong with the demo? That was just a throwaway lyric. What do you mean? They're like, well, no, the stuff you wrote to replace it isn't better.
I love how we always think we're going to replace those, I'm making air quotes, placeholder lyrics that aren't going to be beat. Those 99.9% of the time, that is going to be the lyric. You sang that the first time because that's what naturally felt good to sing. You're probably not going to top that.
True. Yeah. There's just sometimes that spontaneity and that magic. And Stefan touched on that. Sometimes just, the first thing you throw out there, you don't think about it, ends up being the magic.
Yeah. Especially when you're trying to fit other things in there that are more high concept or more thought out, but then the vowels and the consonant sounds and everything don't sing as well, and that original thing that first came out of your mouth is usually going to be the best thing. And Chris, I also thought it was funny. I think this might be the first time that anyone talked about horoscopes on a Chris DeMakes a Podcast episode. And I think that's really funny because as much as I think that horoscopes are bullshit, I also still read them if they're in front of me. And I'm a Taurus, and I kind of feel like when I look at the things that a Taurus is supposed to be, I'm like, oh, wow. That's all me. But I don't know. The thing I don't know is, are horoscopes just self-fulfilling prophecies? Like you read that and then you believe it and then it's in your subconscious and then that makes your day good or bad?
Well, I mean,
because you read that.
I think it's kind of like if you'll pay $10 to the palm reader on the boardwalk at the beach, and she looks at you and says, "You're going to have a fantastic and prosperous life," and you're like, you feel good about yourself, right? Versus, let me see the lines in your hand. You're going to hell today,
right? And if I was reading the palm of the listeners right now, you know what I would read on that palm, Chris?
What would you read, Chris?
That you should join the Chris DeMakes a Podcast supporting cast at chrisdemakes.com. You could support the podcast and get bonus episodes every week, plus a giant back catalog. Hey, we talk about this every week, and I know that if you're listening to this, you're like, what? I hear ads on here. These guys must be raking in the dough. That's not really the case. We're trying to make ends meet over here at Chris DeMakes a Podcast and keep doing this. And for the cost of a cup of coffee per month, you can support the podcast and get a lot more episodes, plus, like I said, a giant back catalog of episodes. All you got to do is head to ChrisDeMakes.com, and I can speak for Chris, and I speak for myself, that we'd really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We're a working class podcast, and Chris, if you ever become a professional wrestler, you should be known as the Segway. That'd be your name.
The Segway.
Yeah. Oh, here comes the Segway. He's got a 2x4. He's going to take everybody out. Yes, please join our supporting cast over at ChrisDeMakes.com. We really appreciate it. Give me a follow on Instagram as well at @LessThanChrisD. Don't forget to join the Chris DeMakes a Podcast Facebook group. Over 4,000 members and counting. Thank you for all your support. And want to thank this week's guest, my good friend, Stephen Egerton, for sitting in with us. And we'll see you next week.